Hello, Team Independence Fund. Welcome to In the Kitchen with Thomason Table. I'm Britt and this is Chandler.
How's it going?
And tonight we're going to teach you how to make three things. So we're going to start with a watermelon feta salad that has a sweet lime dressing on it. We're going to have pork loin with asparagus and some smashed dill Dijon potatoes. We have everything out that you'll need right now. So we had sent you the ingredients list, but we've got 2 cutting boards, 2 different size knives, depending on what we're gonna be cutting, all of our ingredients, and then we have a sheet pan for the pork loin, a little tray for the asparagus, and 2 mixing bowls, just in case. Yeah, so let's get started.
And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a pot on the stove for boiling water for the potatoes. We're going to set the oven to 400 degrees on either a roasting setting or a convection setting. Alright, so you'll notice that all the stuff that we're not working with right now is pushed off to the side just to keep it out of the way, keep it from getting dirty with everything we're going to do over here. So the first thing we're going to work with are the asparagus and our onion, and we're going to make a nice roasted vegetable medley to go with our pork loin. So with asparagus, before you get cooking it, the first thing you want to do is cut off all this kind of white stocky bits. It tastes a little bit woody and no one's going to enjoy that. So let's go ahead and cut off like 2.5 to 3 inches of it, and that should be good, and that should get rid of everything in the bunch. And we're just going to toss that in our pan like that, get rid of our trash over here.
We always start cooking with an empty trash can because we have so much stuff that ends up in it throughout the process.
So we're going to take the onion. This is time for a big chef's knife, cuts through anything. So I cut off the top, twist it, cut off the bottom, get rid of that, do a slice around it like that just to get that first layer off and all that nasty skin. Usually comes off a little cleaner than this. Alright, so you got the top, bottom, and skin cut off, and you're just gonna slice it like that. If you've ever made onion rings, this is kind of like the first step to onion rings, but we're not quite gonna go that crazy tonight. Stack them all back on top of each other and just slice them in half. And we're gonna throw those right in with that asparagus. Britt, if you wouldn't mind mixing all those up together.
Of course. Should I separate them?
Yes.
Okay.
And once she gets those separated, she's going to liberally apply olive oil, salt, and pepper. Or the other way around. We're not gonna go too complicated with this. It's just olive oil and salt and pepper to taste. The onions, if you got the sweet onions, they're gonna break down into like this really caramely flavor, and it's gonna mix really well with the asparagus. And once the salt and pepper and olive oil are in there, it's just gonna be a really nice little side.
Okay, so once you get those all chopped and mixed up like this, you can put them right in the oven.
Great. So next thing we're going to work on is our pork loin, and it's really simple. It's just going to be a little bit of garlic, some Dijon that we're going to use with potatoes, so the flavors kind of echo back and forth, olive oil, pepper, and salt again. So when you do your garlic, I always try to take off the top of everything together and just start peeling through that outer layer of skin. We're going to use, let's call it 6 garlic cloves today on this one. Alright, so you got all this nasty papery bits on and around your garlic. There's a lot of people that say smash it with your knife. I never do that. I just smash everything with my hand like that, and smashing it just a little bit kind of gives it some space to get that skin off of it, and you can peel it nice and easily after that. And the garlic doesn't have to stay whole or pretty because it's just going to get chopped up anyway.
We always try to buy our garlic like this, even though it does come peeled, because it's just a little bit more fresh and the flavor is a little bit more aromatic, would you say?
Yeah, definitely aromatic. There's nothing wrong with already jarred or already minced garlic, but if you got the time, you may as well do it like this. So, got your garlic peeled, and I always take off where the little root is and just nip that right off. All right, so when you're chopping garlic, it's almost like chopping an onion. You're just gonna take your knife like that and chop vertically. Try to keep it as thin as possible. And you wanna get everything sliced in a nice vertical, or rather horizontal. And then once everything is chopped horizontally, you're gonna pile it all back up and mince it. And you're just gonna get little fine bits of garlic. The easiest way to do it, once you get everything chopped down to this level, put it all in a pile and then just rock your knife back and forth and it'll slowly break it down. So everything's in a pile and then just and it'll take time if you haven't done this before. You can go nice and slow. You don't have to go crazy. And it's one of those things, the more you do it, the faster you get and the easier it becomes. So we've got our garlic minced up and a mixing bowl ready for it. And you scoop it up on your knife like that. Tap it in. And we're gonna make our seasoning for the pork tenderloin right now. So, got a little bit of Dijon. I'm gonna put about spoonful, 3/4 of a spoonful in there. Always have a towel on you because your hands get messy. We're probably gonna do like 1/3 of a cup to 1/4 of a cup of olive oil in there. Some fresh cracked pepper. To taste, I like pepper a lot. Britt's not a huge pepper fan, so we meet in the middle and go with a lot of pepper. And then for the salt, anytime I'm mixing it into something and I'm not gonna really taste that salt, I'm gonna use a fine. This is like a nice coarse thick salt. This is just Morton table salt, nothing too crazy. Throw a little bit in there, and then with that spoon you scooped your Dijon from, just go ahead and mix it up. And it's gonna look a little clumpy because the olive oil and the Dijon don't like to play, but it's not a big deal. It's gonna taste great at the end of the day. So, we've got our sauce made. Now we've got our tenderloin. I don't know where you got your tenderloin from. Maybe a great butcher, maybe a supermarket. I got mine from Trader Joe's. It came in a package. It's got this little bit of like tendon right here, or just connective tissue, and it's not really that great to eat. So I'm gonna give you a little quick tip on how to cut that off. All right, so that is what we're taking off right here. So you're gonna wanna use a smaller knife, something like that for this, and make sure it's nice and sharp. If you have one of these steels to sharpen it on, great. If not, I'm sure it's gonna be fine either way. So you stick it in right under it, just like that, and then you just kinda pull it back. Sometimes you miss it. All right, that's off. The rest of that can stay on. It's not really gonna make a difference, but something that has like a big piece like that, it's gonna be really tough and nasty and no one's gonna have a good time eating it. So normally this is something you have your sous chef do. Britt's not a big raw meat fan, so I'm gonna take care of this. You're just gonna pour your seasoning on top, and because it's kind of two different consistencies, your olive oil is gonna go on first and kind of spread around, and then you're gonna have your Dijon mix follow it, and then you're gonna treat this. You get to have a really tough day at work and just kind of work everything in, massage it, make sure all that flavor gets on top so it can cook down through your meat. If it goes off on the sides, it's just gonna burn, and then your house is gonna smell weird, and people are gonna come over and be like, why does it smell like burnt Dijon mustard? And you're like, I had a cooking class and this guy didn't tell me to not leave it on the side. So make sure it stays on top. It's gonna coat your meat, and it's just gonna help cook down into the flavor. And then your hands are messy, you take your towel, just go like that. You're good to go. And you can throw that right in the oven. Same size, same shelf as your veggies on the opposite side, and you're off to the races.
So I'm a huge proponent of cleaning as we go because I hate at the end of a great meal when you then have to go back into the kitchen and clean everything up. So this has raw meat on it. It's going right into the sink with some soap, as well as the knives, which we'll clean quickly so we can use for the rest of our cooking.
Okay, so we're on to the potatoes now. You don't really need a lot of prep work for that. We talked about that boiling water earlier. Hopefully it's boiling. I turned mine off because it was boiling over. And get it boiling. And if you have something that has a colander in it, great. If not, it doesn't really matter. No matter what, the potatoes are just going right in the water. It's just easier to pull them out this way. So take all your potatoes and just dump them right in there. And those are gonna hang out in that water for at least 20 minutes. It depends on the size. If you got little baby ones, they'll probably be done in about 15, but the size that I got, like the size of a golf ball and a half, they take about 20 minutes. All right, pro tip, because I forgot to tell you a second ago, take a little bit of salt and toss it in right on top of your potatoes, and it just helps them get a little bit extra flavor in while they cook in the water.
Okay, so while those things are in the oven, Chandler is going to start cutting up the watermelon as well as the basil and mint, which smells so good. We actually have a little garden in our apartment where we grow all of this stuff fresh, but our cat has been into it, so these are just from the market. I'll show you how to make the dressing that will be going on this, which is super easy. I'm gonna sneak a little bit of Chandler's cutting board here. And I need 2 limes. Oops. And it's the juice of 2 limes. So you can either squeeze this with your hand, which I'm about to do, or if you have a lime press, that's great as well. And I can just go right in here. Made sure to get limes that felt really juicy because I love lime flavor. I think it's so fresh, and the potatoes and the pork are a little heavy, so this kind of lightens up the meal. That's 1. Number 2. And Chandler's just doing a rough chop on this watermelon.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be pretty. You can just work right through it.
Okay, so I've got my 2 limes. I'm going to grab a measuring cup. Sorry. And I'm going to do 1/4 cup of olive oil. And then any kind of honey will work. We're obsessed with this JG's Honey Bomb. It's from Sarasota, Florida, but you can get it online. I love it. It has ginger in it. It's just this great taste. With this, we're gonna do 2 tablespoons of honey. So 1, 2. Kind of start to mix that up. And then we're going to use kosher salt. So this is going to be that fine salt. Again, we're not going to use the baleen. So like I said, this salad's super light. This is the dressing. Then you just have watermelon, feta, basil, and mint. But Chandler is a pro at chopping up red onion, which we think is really delicious with this. So it's going to show you that, and that's just a little garnish that will go on top.
Also, if you're into pickling things, after you chop off your watermelon, you don't want to waste the rinds. You can pickle them and they go great in salads or crudité or anything like that. And a good pickling liquid is just 1-to-1 with water, and then you add salt and sugar into it and boil it and throw these guys in. Okay, so just like we talked about with that sweet onion, you're going to take off the top, the bottom, give it a quick slice to take off that first layer of skin. And that I usually do the first layer of onion with it too. Get rid of that in the trash. And we're gonna use about half. You can use 1/4 if you like red onion. If you don't, make it your own. So to slice this really effectively, you take your knife and you go like that, one more time like that, and then that. And after you got those slices done, you just do vertical cuts every couple centimeters, and then and it comes off diced. It's nice and easy, and then you just kind of give that a little chop at the end, and you got a nice little diced onion, and that can be set aside for garnishing later.
Okay, so we've got our watermelon in our big mixing bowl, our dressing in this bowl. This is super easy. We've got a little bit of feta right here. I just like to sprinkle in. We bought feta which is already crumbled. Some feta is a little bit better if you can buy it uncrumbled, but we didn't this time. It doesn't really matter, personal preference. You just sprinkle that in on top of your watermelon. And then we've got our basil here.
You would chop that up.
Yeah, Chandler's the pro chopper, so he's gonna chop some basil and some mint. I'm gonna sprinkle on top the red onion. And we are using a really large mixing bowl because we're gonna be able to like shush this around. And while he chops that, oh, I think that's perfect. The basil and mint are just for accent flavor, so you don't have to do a ton. While he chops that, I'm just gonna put the dressing right on top. It doesn't matter the method in which you put this all together because everything's just gonna mix together in the end. I'll take the same spoon that I mixed the dressing with and just give this a couple twirls around. Ooh, it looks good. This is a really pretty summer salad, and it's a nice thing to serve to guests because it's super light. And I mean, there's almost, other than the feta, nobody's really allergic to any of this stuff. Nowadays, I feel like everybody's allergic to everything, so this is kind of an easy one. And feta is actually one of the easiest dairies to digest if you're gonna have cheese. So
look at that, learning something every day.
the longer that this sits for, the more it's going to absorb the dressing that we made. So I'm actually just gonna put this just like this right in the fridge. So the meat needs to cook for 45 minutes total. Right now we're about 15 minutes in. So while that's still in there for 30 minutes, the potatoes needed 20. We probably need 10 more on those. I'm gonna clean like crazy now because like I mentioned, I hate a mess at the end of the night. So while we clean, we let everything else cook, and then we'll show you how to make this mashed potatoes and finish off the meat.
Okie dokie, we're back. So our potatoes are done in this lovely colander. I'm just gonna dump them out onto another baking sheet, and we're gonna get the topping ready for them.
And if you didn't have a colander, you'd obviously just put them in over a strainer. Super easy.
Exactly. So for what's gonna go on top of them, we got more garlic. Just gonna give it a quick hand smasheroo. I'm gonna chop that up. What's gonna go in these potatoes is garlic, olive oil, salt, pepper, and dill. We've got a lot of the same flavors echoing through this. I kind of try to do all meals like that. You can build the complexity with just a few flavors and just a few spices and herbs, so you don't really have to go too crazy stocking up your pantry to be able to put something out there that's not, or that's super flavorful, not crazy bland. All right, so we got all of our nasty bits gone. Gonna give that a quick chippy chop. So for these, we're not gonna mince it nearly as much as we did everything else. We're just gonna get our little thin horizontal slices through and then give it like 2 chops back the other way, and we're gonna call it a day. Because sometimes when you chop everything too thin, the garlic kind of burns, and with this you get more of a more full garlic flavor from it. One more chop like that, another first chop, and then one more chop like that, and we're gonna throw that in our mixing cup and Britt, if you wouldn't mind throwing some olive oil, salt, and pepper in there. I'm gonna chop up the dill. If you buy like a bunch.
Which salt?
Let's do the fine kosher salt.
Okay.
So if you buy a big bunch of dill, I usually use about half of it for this. And I keep the stems in there, keep it all together, and just try to finely chop it. You're not gonna go crazy going back through and chopping it again. I usually just do one time. Dill is so fine on its own that if you get it chopped once, it's all kind of gonna be the same consistency the whole way through. So.
How much olive oil should we do?
Let's do about 1/8 of a cup. So 3 seconds.
Okay.
Perfect. And then last but not least, our Dijon that we used on the pork. And we're gonna do about that much. You want a lot. Britt, if you wouldn't mind mixing that up. So while Britt's doing that, we are going to smash our potatoes. You just need something that's hard and flat. I'm gonna use a mason jar. You can use pretty much anything. And you just kind of give them a smush like that. You don't want them to go flat or just destroy them like I've done many, many times before. You're kind of just gonna compress it about halfway. And they should be already cooked, so they'll just kind of pop apart without an issue. And you just want to kind of spread them apart as you go, so they're not all on top of each other.
You can line them like you're making cookies, basically, because they're going to end up being small circles like you would cookie dough.
Exactly. I don't have the best spatial relations.
So this is what our mixture ended up looking like, and just gonna use that spoon to dollop it on and then kind of just cover these. You can always go a little bit lighter when you start out to make sure that you have enough, and then add more. I really like these because they seem like so much effort, but at the end of the day, they're just potatoes with a little bit of mustard on them, and you can make them seem really upscale, but they're kind of an inexpensive dish to make. So whenever we're hosting a bunch of friends, we make stuff like this because, you know, we're only a few years out of college. We're still balling on a budget in this apartment over here. And voila.
All right, so right before we stick them in the oven, I'm gonna give them one last drizzle of olive oil. Just get everything a little bit extra oil and a nice sprinkling of salt. And that salt kind of helps it formulate a nice little crust.
And back in the oven. So quick sneak peek at what the oven looks like right now. The asparagus is starting to crisp, and so are the onions really nicely. And the pork probably has
10 more minutes
10
left.
more minutes left.
Everything's gonna be in here for about another 10 minutes, and then we're gonna pull it all at the same time.
So those potatoes go in there for 10 minutes after you put that topping on.
Okay, so it's been the proper amount of time for the veggies and for the pork loin. So we're just gonna pull those right now while those potatoes are finishing up. And for the last few minutes of the potatoes, we've probably got about 5 minutes left in there. I'm gonna set it to broil just to give everything a little bit extra flavor. Okay, so we pulled the pork loin out of the oven, pulled all the veggies out. We set the potatoes to broil for a few minutes, And we just pulled the potatoes out, so we've given this about 5-6 minutes to set. You wanna let your meat settle for 5 to 10 minutes after you take it out of the heat, just so all the juices get locked into it. And we're just gonna slice it up now. And just like that, good to go, ready to eat.
So we now have our final product, which is the beautiful watermelon salad, the pork, asparagus, and then we put our smashed potato right in the middle. And you should be good to go, ready to eat. We're gonna have a little rosé tonight. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we are looking forward to meeting you virtually after in our Zoom meeting, answering any questions you may have had, comments, concerns. We have had an absolute blast, and we're so excited to now devour this food. If you learned anything or liked what you saw, we're on Instagram at the Thomason Table, and we're at thethomasontable.com. So enjoy.
Thanks for tuning in.